Well, parents, Nudgee parents, welcome to, I guess, what is a first for us here at Nudgee Boarding as we come to you live tonight. I can't help but think that last Friday night we would have all gathered under the Learning Centre to share a drink and some stories at the evening on the green. But in this new world, tonight we come together for our evening on the screen. So I'd like to thank you all for logging in this evening and sharing some of your questions, which we will certainly get to. Before I start, I just wanted to acknowledge that whilst we're a community that is dispersed across Australia and overseas, and that our community isn't together at the moment, the strength of who we are goes well beyond the gates here at Nudgee. And I think that's been really evident in so many of the dialogue and conversations that we've had with boys and parents from a distance. I'd like to thank you as well for many of you who've sent emails and messages of support to myself and to the gentleman here at the table tonight. It has certainly fueled us in what has been some very difficult and trying few weeks, and I really do appreciate your support. Just want to acknowledge as well Miss Megan Brearley, O'Brien house mum, who also works in our development communications team, who was really the driver of tonight's event. I think it's been wonderful. Originally, the event tonight, as I mentioned, was going to be as a replacement to our evening on the green. But given the current circumstances that have occurred in the last few days, I think it's been a really timely opportunity for us to be able to meet and present, I guess, where we are at and certainly where we are heading. Can I also thank Raoul Carmody, who behind the scenes works very hard with our IT and AV crew to set up an event like this evening, and many of the events that have been online and presented by certainly the college leadership team and others. I really also want to pay a very special tribute to the four men who are sitting around here tonight, the heads of boarding house, who have done an amazing effort to keep their family units in their boarding houses connected and to keep an eye on the boys, their welfare and their formation. And even for, again, just tonight, making themselves available to come to this. It's actually Ken's 25th wedding anniversary tonight, but he's here with us tonight, and we thank him for being here. I'm not sure who's in more trouble, me or him with Chris, but we certainly appreciate him making that sacrifice to be here with us tonight. So tonight what I'd like to do is give a little bit of a brief outline of where we've got to over the last few weeks. I've been able to send out some emails and acknowledge or outline some of the things that have occurred, but I probably just want to give it a little bit more detail to that. And talk a little bit about sort of where to from here. But I've asked the four heads of house to be here tonight as well, so they can give a bit of some feedback and a bit of an impression about how boarding at home has gone for the last 4 or 5 weeks within their houses, and even just some of the lessons that have been learnt, and maybe even some of the takeaway ideas and concepts that they've learnt from this experience that might add and I guess improve the boarding experience for our boys. So if we just go back a few weeks, just for people's knowledge, we had in week 1, we were obviously closed and that was obviously really difficult. We identified about 10 to 15 boys who really were quite vulnerable and needed to return to boarding because of being sons of essential workers or having absolutely no connectivity to Wi-Fi. We were able to get them to return. We got special exemption to open our boarding house for those boys upon their return. And then in week 3, it's great to see such a massive announcement on a Monday public holiday that school was coming back in less than a week. And so that had all of us scrambling very quickly to get our 11s and 12s organised and to have them return. So it was wonderful to have those boys. We had about 40-odd Year 11 and 12 boys return for week 4. And straight away they were able to get back and get organised, and it was wonderful to have them in our community. It was nice as well to see some of the boys that were billeted out or found opportunities to stay with Dayboy family or family friends in Brisbane and still be able to see them around school in week 4. We then dealt with the border exemptions to get people from getting families and boys from interstate, from New South Wales and Northern Territory, Western Australia, Victoria, ACT and even Tasmania. And we're still working with some families. There are a number of boys who still don't have an exemption to return and not have to quarantine. And our thoughts are with 2 boys who are currently located down in the health centre at the moment, quarantined from returning from interstate. Again, we had our 3 boys from China at the start of the year who returned and had to quarantine for 2 weeks. It was a really tough time for them, as it is for the 2 boys who are currently down in our health centre at the moment, quarantining, and certainly we're looking after them as well. Then we had the document from the Australian Health Protection Principal Committee, and I'm getting used to the acronym, the AHPPC, because I've said it now about 1,000 times. But that's a federal organisation that put together a list of guidelines for residential communities or residential colleges that were looking after borders and so forth, or essentially to build a risk assessment or a site-specific risk assessment. And again, for those that know me, that is not my skill, nor certainly something I enjoy doing. So being able to lean on some people here in the room tonight, as well as others around the school, that document which I've got here, which I will share with all families, just so you can see it, is a very comprehensive document outlining the many mitigation strategies that we've put in place to support and look after our boys in a safe way and to mitigate risk of a COVID-19 outbreak within our dormitories. And then obviously today's email that came out, which was on the back of, on Tuesday, having our local public health unit come to do our site inspection. We were actually the first boarding school in Brisbane to have that site inspection. So I had about 15 phone calls straight afterwards to other boarding schools wanting to know the outcome. It was very good. I wanted to just acknowledge that they were very impressed with the facility. They were very impressed with the protocols and the systems and procedures. They believed that they were of the highest standard, as we would expect at Nudgee. A lot of work has gone into developing those. Unfortunately, the issue of dormitories and the definition of dormitories has been a really contentious issue in the last 48 hours. Just for people's knowledge, the AHPPC, in just a one-off, very small statement in a fairly large document, referred to dormitories, which is a word that probably hasn't been heard by boarders for the last 50 years, that dormitories should reduce their capacity to 25%. Unfortunately, the health officer from our local unit that came out, she deemed that our boarding facility did come under the umbrella of a dormitory because the walls of each room did not proceed all the way to the ceiling, and that the boys would be sharing the same night air. And so therefore, there was a risk of infection. So that was why she believed we needed to stay at the 25%. So we've been working in the last 24 hours very closely with our own local federal member, a local state member. We've been working with ICPA. I know a number of families as well have been reaching out to their local members and federal and state members to lobby really hard for this to be adjusted. We've also worked our way through QCEC, Queensland Catholic Education Commission, for them to speak to Dr. Jeanette Young, the Chief Health Officer here in Queensland, to ask her to make a ruling on this percentage of 25%. She's come back in the last hour or so to say that she will review it, but it's still her belief that should hold. So we're also now working through the Australian Boarding Schools Association to lobby the federal government, who oversees the AHPPC, to ask them to make an amendment to the word dormitory, that there would be a categorisation that we would be under segmented dormitories and allow us to be able to increase, therefore, our occupancy to maybe even 50%, which would make an enormous difference. So we've been, as I said, a lot of organisations and people are working very hard behind the scenes to try and get that to change. We are really hopeful that there might be a new draft of that document that comes out on Friday, and certainly it's a difficult thing at the moment. I guess that's where we're at the moment. So going forward, some of the things that we've put in place, the boys that have returned, we have about 70 odd boys that have returned already, which we're approaching pretty much our full status based on that 25% capacity. So we've put in a lot of social distancing measures within the dorms. Boys are health checked, staff are health checked every day, but that health check for the boys is more than just a temperature check. It's actually also a well-being check-in by the nurses to see how boys are travelling, to make sure that they are okay both physically and mentally. Boys and staff have downloaded the COVID Safe app. Staff have completed an online course in COVID hygiene protection or prevention management, as well as flu shots and other areas. One of the questions that came out, and thank you for those questions that did come through, was around leave. And I know that we've been having a lot of conversations with boys around, I guess, some contradictory measures that are in place in the boarding school, but not in the day school. So I wanted to address that tonight because I know that is a source of frustration for boys and may well be for families as well. But in saying that, I've got to say the boys that have been back here have been absolutely exemplary in I guess, just acknowledging and accepting that the rules that are in place. Essentially, at the moment, it's the belief of Queensland Health, or their recommendation, that we don't allow boys to leave campus. And part of that is again, about risk mitigation. We're working with them to see if we can't ease those restrictions in the coming weeks to allow boys to be able to return home on weekends with their immediate family. We're hoping that will be the case, as I said, in coming weeks. But it's really about us as a team being able to manage and I guess be responsible for who the boys are associating with. Whilst they're at school, and boys have made this comment to me that they come out of the boarding house and associate with day boys in class, I guess our response is that in that classroom environment, the teacher has some level of control or ability to ensure that there's some level of social distancing, some level of hygiene and hand sanitisation that allows us to I guess, meet some criteria that we're managing the boys and where they're going and where who they're with. And I know it is tough, but I guess the Chief Health Officer's obligation is really around, they are really concerned about not just boarding houses at schools, but we fall under the same residential care. We fall under the same umbrella as aged care facilities, as university facilities, as backpacker facilities. All these facilities fall under the same umbrella. It's very difficult that they'll make a statement, and it quite often will take them a few days and weeks to then individualise each of those areas within that. So, as I said, at the moment, they're very concerned about residential living and densely populated residential living, that they feel that that should someone in that place get the virus, that it would spread quite quickly. So at the moment, as I mentioned, it's been really tough, but we've been able to, as I said, go above and beyond Queensland Health's expectations on our hygiene and care and cleaning of the facilities that are in place. One thing that has come up by a couple of parents that I guess haven't been able to return or looking like they may not be able to return next week is, have they got the ability to come to Brisbane and be a day boy? And absolutely they do. And I can assure you that there would be numerous, tens, hundreds of day boy families that would happily take a boarder and look after them for 2, 3, 4 weeks for the rest of this term. But just on that, again, and I hate to get into the long grass around regulations, much like around our leave protocol, we can't institute that for that boy to go to a day boy's house that you've never met. It needs to be coordinated between the two families. So we are certainly able to help facilitate parents of boarders being introduced to parents of day boys, and for them to make the decision that they would like their son to be billeted or looked after by that day boy family. We are very, as I said, very open to creating the connection, but what we can't do is direct a boy to go to a day boy family house because then it becomes a really difficult and legal position for us to be in. So, but I'm really keen. I know a number of families have already reached out to me this evening and today, and I'm very motivated to try to make sure that as many boys as possible that can get back to Brisbane and be a day boy in this interim period and get to Nudgee and get to their class, and because we know that learning is best in the classroom, we are happy to try to facilitate and help that where we can. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to hand over to to the heads of house to have a bit of a conversation, because I certainly know that if I keep talking for too long, I will cop a lot of banter from these four lovely gentlemen. So what I'd like to do is I'll hand to them to talk a little bit about boarding at home and how it's been and what, as I mentioned, what have been some of the highlights for them. Then I'll come back and I might go through some of the questions that parents have posted, and any questions that you might post up there as well. We've got Megan Brearley, our wonderful moderator this evening, who is going to read those questions out to us as well. So we'll be able to answer some of those questions, and maybe possibly as a special treat, we might be able to get some parents to even be able to come online as well to make some comments or statements or even questions themselves. So I might hand over to Ben Ralston, our head of Murphy House.
Hi all, hope everyone's safe and well. obviously some Murphy parents may be a little bit surprised to see me, as some may know that I was supposed to be on long service leave probably at this time of the trip in the south of France, and also married, but that all didn't happen. So here we are, and the school's been nice enough to keep me on, so it's been good. So Murphy itself, we've actually really got to know the boys a little bit deeper through the NC boarding at home. We've done a few different things, and it's been a good collaboration between the staff of all of Murphy. So the big highlight for us will probably be the Q&A with Sean Tooby. So Sean's gone above and beyond, as he does, and has produced 3 interviews per week for the last five weeks. And it's been really good for staff and for peers, just to get to know boys on a different level. He's gone through maps, showed the boys where they're from, got to talk about their childhood, how they got to Nudgee, what they like about Nudgee, all different things, which has been really good, especially for me as a head of house. Sometimes you don't get a really good chance to be able to, I suppose, connect with the boys on that level, because there's so many boys in-house and so many things going on. So it's been really good, and that's definitely something that we will continue with moving forward. So Christian spoke about things that we've learnt. I've learned a lot about the kids that have been interviewed, and then also kids that I've spoken to through Google Chats. And one thing that Nudgee does really well is provide that inclusive community. So when they do come back, we just need to make sure that we can celebrate, I suppose, the individual, where they're from, and I suppose get to know their story a little bit better. The other thing that we've touched upon, and Murphy's been big over the last 2 years since I've been involved with the Are You OK message. So just looking after the boys' wellbeing and making sure that we're looking after each other. So it's been good for boys to reach out to me that have been struggling a little bit and tell me that boys have asked the question of Are You OK, and tried to reach out through them through social media or through the group chats through the NC boarding at home. The wellbeing wall, which is a physical wall in Murphy, we've tried to keep that running, and that's just on hot topics to do with sleep, stress, a little bit of study tips. So for us, it's been a good experience getting to know boys, the wellbeing wall, and that has tied in well with the day school initiative of the pulse checks. So the Thursday Google form that's filled out, and boys answer a series of questions, which enables boys to reach out if they do need a hand. So all in all, we're going strong, but would really like everyone back. Okay.
Thanks, Ben. Just acknowledge as well that pulse check that goes out now to all 1,680 boys was actually first developed in Murphy House and was running all of term 1, and then branched out into our other 4 boarding houses. So it's wonderful to see that initiative that Murphy set up early in term 1 has now been such a wonderful tool that's been used by the whole school to be able to check in with boys and how they're travelling. Casey.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining tonight. I guess this term for me has been probably a bit of an emotional roller coaster. It started off sitting in an empty dorm, pretty lonely, and I guess craving the connection with the boys. And, you know, as hard as it has been, it's been tough for all of you at home as well, having the boys isolated and, you know, trying to get them to study and keep on top of their academic work. There's been some real silver linings that have come out of this cloud, I think. And the main one for me is it's kind of demonstrated how strong the Nudgee community really is. You know, in all of the conversations I've had with boys and with parents, it's just been this real hunger for the boys to return. And, you know, it's been really nice to catch up with them on Google Meet, whether it's a whole house meeting or, you know, smaller little groups that we've been meeting with, just to see their faces light up when they see their Nudgee brothers. And some of them are even happy to see me, which is a surprise. Usually it's the last thing they want to do is come into my office. But it's been really special, I guess, to see our staff going above and beyond as well, and trying to keep that community alive. I'm hopeful that some of our Cotter families have been looking at Dwayne's Daily Dose. For those of you who don't know, Dwayne is a bit of a cult hero in our Cotter house, and he's probably one of the most enthusiastic men I've ever come across. So he's been doing some fantastic interviews with boys. Govesy's gigs have also been a big hit, and the other day I was completely shocked to see Oscar Coots even sing a song for us on Govesy's gigs. If you don't know Oscar, sometimes it's hard to get 3 words out of him, let alone a whole song, and he did the Proclaimers 500 miles, which was really good. Yeah, I guess it's been a really interesting experience, a really tough one to navigate through. And I thank all the families for the positive feedback and for all that you guys are doing to support us as well. And, just even propping us up when, times have been tough. But I think as a whole, it's just really demonstrated how important Nudgee College and Nudgee boarding in particular is to the boys that live here, and how much they feel a part of our community, even when they are so distant at the moment. So there's been some really good things that have come out of that we'll continue with. And I think Dwayne will have to start interviewing parents soon because he's almost run out of kids. So I saw Pam Lespina's in this chat. We'll get you teed up for an interview with Dwayne. Thanks.
Thanks, Casey. I'll hand over to Ken.
Thanks, Christian. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here and talking with you all. The boarding house sites that we're all talking about and excited about, because we've loved engaging with the boys with them over the last 4 or 5 weeks, really have been a positive thing. I think we're all going to use those going forward. I remember the first time I was planning to do a HOTA meeting, and I was all ready, and I had the agenda, and I was ready to go like I would normally in the physical HOTA house. And then when I saw all the faces pop up, that all went out the window, and I was just talking to them again, and their smiling faces and saying hello. So that was, I guess, showed us the power of the connectivity that we've had with them. So that's been a really positive experience. It has been a great platform, the boarding house sites in general. The staff videos on the HOTA site, if you haven't checked them out, I did one on the first day or the day that they were due to come back, and just took them for a virtual tour around the boarding house. I've shown them how to jump start a car. That was interesting, and to roll start a car as well. So parents, if you have any other ideas for me, I've got a few, just please send them through. And anything, and it was just a good opportunity to just do some of those things that as a dad, I might do with my own sons, and certainly it was good fun to do it for the boys too. And from some of the comments, they had a laugh as well. I hope they learned something too. Another one we've got going on the HOTA site is Strava. A lot of you may know how that works. It's just a fitness app, and it records times, which work for me because I take a long time to get my rides in and that type of thing. So last week I was on top, fantastic. This week I'm not even on it. So last week was a bit better. As I said, we've enjoyed this virtual world, I guess, and we'll definitely use it going forward. But it's fair to say we miss the boys a lot, and obviously want them back, and the houses come alive, I think, with them there at the moment, or when they were empty before we had anyone back, they were just building. So we're definitely keen to get the boys back. After a week of being a teacher and learning online, teaching online, I've just felt compelled to email all the parents of the students in my classes just to say thank you and well done. The boys just engaged. I was just having a really positive experience, and I think the main reason was because of the boys. They were working hard, asking questions, engaging. So that's, as a teacher, that's been a positive experience. As I said before, if you have any other ideas for us, whether it's...
It's a great question.
I just put my
Megan, do you want to read that one out?
Can you teach them to put dishes in the dishwasher?
That's on the list. Putting dishes in the dishwasher, that's definitely on the list.
And take them out and put them away again.
Always doing that,
And to take them out and put them away as well.
Yes.
Yeah, at least Lockie doesn't do that when he's here, so good luck at home.
Are there any other questions?
This one's from Amanda. What about changing a tire
tire.
and change a washer and a tire?
Yeah, Ken will have to learn first.
I'll get onto those. So look, it has been a great experience. Obviously, we're under pressure with restrictions, but hopefully as soon as we can get the boys back, we'll all be a lot happier. So thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ken, and I'll hand over to Jeff now.
Look, everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. Like everyone else has said, the last 5 or so weeks have been quite a bit of a challenge. Coming from a junior boarding house, we're used to an environment which is loud, energetic, sometimes a little bit hectic. And to say that I'm in a dorm now with 6 O'Brien boys, it's eerie in the way in which it operates. So I really am looking forward to the opportunity to get the O'Brien boys back. But the last few weeks have taught us just how much this community means to our boys, and the level of involvement which we've had in our online site has just been outstanding. I mean, we have got the wonderful Megan Brearley, who's been working as our house mum to get the site up and running and to come up with the ideas. But for me, one of the best things about our site has been that many of the initiatives of what we're doing have come from the boys themselves. One of the ideas around this week has come from one of our Year 9 boys. Just that idea of standing up and coming up with an idea, hey, I want to do this. I think this would be great for the boys to see. And for me, that's a really good opportunity. I love to see boys stand up and start to develop some of those leadership skills, which, at a school like Nudgee, we foster and we try and grow over their years here. So it's been a really good opportunity for that. But for me, we've seen so many funny things come across some of our big key activities. We've had the lip sync battle that's been going on for a number of weeks now. And I know that Mr. Brearley is keen to show the video of me in week 1 doing my lip sync battle to I'm a Banana. If you're boys on the Google site and you feel like jumping in, that was a song nominated by one of our dorm leaders, Tom Hansen. So I know I'll never live that down. But
They'll never look at you the same
They
again.
will never look at me the same
Hands
again.
down the highlight of Nudgee boarding at home.
So if you have got a minute and it's cringeworthy, but you want to look at something, jump in the O'Brien lip sync battle and you'll see that happening. But it's been a good opportunity for us to, I suppose, learn where people are from. One of the activities has been a virtual house tour, and we've got the boys to go around and take videos of where their property is or what their house looks like. One of our boys took us on a bit of a ride through the property, showed us down the dam, through the lake, things like that, which was really good. Megan also put up an interactive map of the world that shows a little pin drop where each of the boys live. And I think that's a good opportunity for boys to see that we come from such a wide range of places. We all call home somewhere different. And for me, that's been a really positive experience of this. But moving forward for the junior boys, I know that for many of them today, that they were gutted when they got that news. A dorm of 72 to really only think we're going to have 6 O'Brien boys for the next few weeks. It is gutting. We're obviously sharing the rooms with some of the 11s and 12s so that we can keep that social distancing happening. But it is, I suppose, disappointing that we haven't got our boys back. But with that, our staff are really committed to make sure that those connections with the boys, the phone calls, the Google Hangouts, are kept up and probably prioritised a little bit more over the coming weeks, along with a bit more of a focus on academic and how the boys are going academically. We have kept the A-team tuition going on a Tuesday and Thursday night, that out external group where the boys can log in and access that help. But part of the phone calls and Google Hangouts from us in the next week or so will be around trying to ensure that the boys don't feel disconnected from their academics. While they are away from the school, it is our priority that we make sure their academics don't fall away. Just because you're not here doesn't mean that your education isn't important. And for me, that is, I suppose, a priority that I'm really pushing over the next few days to make sure that that is at the forefront of people's minds for whose son can't be here.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for all of you heads of house who have worked so hard these past few weeks. What I'd like to do now is just to go through some of the questions that had been sent through, and then any questions that are certainly put through on the screen. The first one, there was a couple of questions around, I guess, a similar theme. So thank you to Michelle and to Cody for sending them through. So I guess, when will boarding return to normal? To be honest, that's the $1 million question. We don't know. At the moment, we're hopeful that things will start to ease in the coming weeks. We're hopeful that they'll start to ease even next term. But to be honest, talking at the meetings that I've been at, I guess we all have to prepare ourselves that things won't go back to normal this year. What they will go back to, I don't know. And we are certainly working very hard to, as I said, to get some level of normalcy back to our boarding house. But it certainly would appear that some level of restriction will be enforced across all levels of society for quite some time. And so I guess we need to be prepared for that. Cecilia asked a really good question, and a few others have asked this in passing as well, as what, and Jeff certainly highlighted at the end there, what will learning and teaching look like for boys next week that aren't able to return? So we've spoken at length at college leadership team around this, because it really is a central point, as Jeff made. We'll work towards going to what's called a hybrid model next week, where teachers will turn their cameras on and their audio on, so boys are able to log in and essentially be virtually part of the lesson by being able to hear the content and even be able to ask questions and engage in the lesson from being online. They'll also be shared work through their Google Drive to ensure that they are able to work on their own material as well with whatever worksheets or assessment or idea content that is handed out. We'll also work very closely with teachers and heads of faculty to modify assessment and look to apply special consideration, especially for the boarders that are unable to return. That'll be certainly a high priority. I know Jeff as well is working very, very closely with some staff as well to look at a model of providing some extra support to our boys in grade 7, 8, 9, so that we can provide some specific support around some of those core subjects of English, RE, math, science and humanities. So we'll work on a situation for that in the coming days as well to provide that support. We're hopeful that we've got the majority of 11s and 12s back, but those that haven't come back or can't come back because they can't cross a border or they're still overseas internationally, those boys are still able to log on. Again, we'll modify assessment for those boys. Comparable tasks will be sent so that they can do those tasks at home. And I know that a lot of the heads of house have already identified who those boys are and have sent that through to teaching and learning, so that they're learning teaching, so they're able to log that as well and make sure that those boys will be kept up to speed and certainly be aware of it through the assessment period. From our own, I guess, support process in boarding is we will continue to run those where possible. We'll be running those online tutoring at night. We'll still be running 18 tuition online, continuing for the rest of the term as well. So we'll be still providing that level of support that we have had in boarding for the last 5 weeks. That will continue. And, I've had actually a number of teachers who don't work in boarding approach me to offer to be able to log in at night or connect with boys and be able to assist them as well with some private tutoring as well through this period. So certainly the school is very focused about our boarding community and being able to assist them with their teaching and learning. Shannon asked a really good question about, what can parents do to continue to lobby government? Certainly, I do encourage all of you that are either not able to get back or stuck or not able to return to please email your local member, both state and federal, to let them know the more messages that they get from parents and from people, the more they will be able to feel more compelled to action that. I've spoken to one parent this evening who'll put together maybe even like an email petition that might be able to go out that people can add their voice and add their name to again, I guess, highlight the level of concern and disadvantage that many from regional and rural areas will feel by the state government making the decision for school to return but not provide a provision to support boarders and boarding families. Melanie, thank you for your question around the Sunshine Coast bus. And I think there was also a question up there about Southside bus. We are currently running a bus to the Sunshine Coast morning and afternoon every day. So some year 11 and 12 boys have taken that option up. We will continue to run that, I guess, as long as we need to. Essentially, as long as we have to, we'll continue to run that. So those families in grades 7 to 10, there is a Sunshine Coast bus, and I believe that email went out from Tonya earlier today to let you know that bus. If you log on to the bus team app site, you're able to connect and pay and book a seat on the Sunshine Coast bus. The question I think that came through on the screen tonight was about buses to the south side of Brisbane. My understanding is we do have a bus service that travels to the south side of Brisbane, but we would need to just confirm exactly where you are to be able to support you in being able to do for your son to be able to catch that bus. So we'll get your name and details, and we'll certainly get that information back to you about the bus service. How do you purchase a bus ticket? Well, bus tickets in general can be purchased from the tuck shop and locker room and things like that. The Sunshine Coast bus, that can be purchased through the payment portal. And again, there is a link on the Team App bus site that allows you to do that. But just know as well, because who we are, if a boy turns up to get on a bus, he won't be turned away. So we will take the boy's name and be able to catch up down the track for that payment. So that service will still, as I said, is still available for families. Randall, yeah, certainly this is a question that's come up a bit around Brisbane-based boarders, and thank you to the many families and I guess for your understanding that we have had to try to prioritise where possible boys from regional and rural areas, and especially boarders in grade 12 who are coming up to the end of they're finishing their ATAR and QCE. We needed to get them back and in the classroom, as well as obviously the year 11 boys. Certainly, getting any boarders back is our priority. When would we be the likelihood of year 12 boarders Brisbane-based boarders being able to return? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question yet. I guess for us, the priority is really about boys getting an education. That's first. And then the second priority is about getting boys back into boarding. So those boys who need to get to Nudgee to get the education, I guess at the moment are our priority. And I guess I come back to the point I made earlier for boarding families, especially year 7 boarders that are out there that might feel as though they haven't had the opportunity to connect yet with day boy families in year 7. Please reach out to us. I don't want to hand Jeff another job, but please reach out to the both of us and others. We will try to connect you with day boy families that would be open to having your son stay with them so that they can commute to Nudgee as a day boy and come to class. So that's certainly for all year levels, we are really keen to do that. Brad asked a really good question around the isolation of interstate borders. What would happen for the holidays? As long as the border restrictions are in place, those exemptions will need to be asked for each time you cross the border. Now, my understanding is to get the border pass or the border permit is actually a pretty easy process. To get the exemption to not have to isolate, that was the challenging part for some families. You had to demonstrate that you met a certain criteria, whether it was 200 kilometres from the border or whether or not you were coming from a rural or remote property where you have not got any COVID-19 and you've been isolated in that place, or you come from the Northern Territory. Some families that don't meet those criteria, I certainly know of one family that doesn't meet that criteria who has been granted an exemption. I sent that form out to those families to send an email to the Chief Health Officer. Once you've got that exemption, I personally consider that the exemption for the year, unless things change. But you would need to get the border permit to cross the border each time. Really lovely question here from Natasha about how are boys going that sadly haven't been able to return to boarding. Look, we're certainly monitoring their mental health on a daily and weekly basis. These good men and the other staff that work in boarding have been making regular phone calls each week to boys who haven't returned to check in on how they're travelling. But the one thing I've noticed the most, the feedback, is every time they're able to connect online with their friends, with their class, with their boarding house, the boys' spirits are lifted immediately from that experience. So the more that we will continue to do that. Boarding at home will continue after this. Whilst we don't have boys unable to return, we will still provide that ability for boys to connect to their boarding house, to both staff and their brothers in those boarding houses. I think we've talked a little bit about how we prioritise who's going to return. talked a little bit about what, I guess, the definition of Brisbane-based. I guess with all of these things, Fiona asked a great question. I guess we're all just trying to work case by case with each family and what their needs are and how we can best support you. So you might be out of the footprint of Brisbane, that's fine, or you might even be inside the footprint of Brisbane, but there is a real need and that requiring your son to come into boarding. We will certainly work with you to either find a solution to support you or support your son being able to come to school or have to come into boarding as it was. A great question from Tammy around sport and what sport will look like next term. I know that you've received some communication from the principal, from Mr. Fulliger, regarding Term 3 sport. So basketball, chess, cross country, football, rugby and tennis are all going to compete next term, which is terrific that all of those sports boys will have the ability to compete in those. They are going to have to make some decisions, however, about which sport they choose. I believe they are able to choose cross country and one of the others, but they're not going to be able to choose to do both football and rugby or rugby and tennis or so on and so forth. So some decisions will be made by those boys when that happens. Regards to selections and camps, so right now there is no approval for boys to do any training this term. So no sports at all are training at the moment. We in boarding, connecting with a lot of our strength and conditioning team, we've got them to run some games and activities in the afternoon to give the boarders that are in at the moment some exercise and to get them out and get them involved. But there's no training of any specific sport at the moment. That won't occur until mid-June, which is essentially our June-July holidays. So there will be camps over the June-July holidays for boys to attend. And I haven't raised it with these good men, but we will look at where we can help and again provide support for boarding families to be able to come down and go to those camps. There'll be a delayed start to the rugby season because contact training cannot begin until, if I confirm my July 11th and 12th, which is the last weekend of the June-July holidays. So because contact training can't begin until then, there'll have to be a 3-week period of contact training before that first game can actually occur, because we know that certainly in the last 12 months, we're working through a much more stringent rugby passport program to ensure the safety of boys that play rugby. So selections won't occur or anything won't occur until that final weekend. But certainly if your son was interested in playing rugby and being selected, he had aspirations of being selected in an A or B team, he'd need to be trying to make himself available for that rugby camp at the end of the holidays. In saying that, talking to Anthony Cannellan, Mr. Cannellan, our Director of Activities, he said that their priority as heads of sport down there, directors of sport down there, their priority is simply just to get games and get sport up and running next term. They all acknowledge that selections as a thing is going to be a really difficult task given the short time frame to get a lot of sports up and running for next term. And I think he'll be asking, and those people running those sports will be asking for everyone's patience and understanding that the real goal is to get boys back playing sport. They may not end up in the team they might have wanted to or hoped to, but the real goal will be simply just to get back and playing some sport. For boarding families, the real challenge will be around spectators. There will be a significant limit on who is able to spectate. I think it's for open year level, there might be one parent is allowed. For year 5 and 6, one parent might be allowed, and boys in grades 7 to 10, there might be no parents allowed. So again, these are all guidelines that we've been given by the government, by Queensland Health, and by the governing bodies of these sporting associations. So that's information that will come out later, but certainly something to be mindful of. But again, I guess I encourage people to be conscious that the real aim is to get boys back in sport, in games and activities next term. So I've answered what the last question or second last question here, I think, was around A-team tuition, and certainly the boarding at home platform will continue. The NC at home platform, as I mentioned, will be more of a hybrid model, but we'll be working very closely, heads of house and especially Jeff, at making sure they provide a really strong program of learning and teaching for boys who are unable to return. And I think I've answered the question on leave and club sport. At the moment, unfortunately, we can't approve that at the moment. Megan, we might go to any questions that have popped up that we have not answered yet.
Okay.
Can I just acknowledge while Megan's getting organised, the four heads spoke about the classroom or the sites, the boarding house sites, and a tremendous amount of work was put in delivering that content of videos and photo competitions and all of that. But I also want to acknowledge again Megan Brearley, who was again behind the scenes working really hard to set up all of those four sites, those Google sites. It was a tremendous amount of work that occurred over the Easter holidays. And I think you'll all agree that it provided such a wonderful platform for the boys to connect. So just wanted to acknowledge again Megan and all of her work behind the scenes. So Megan, any questions we've missed? She's the better Brearley.
Thanks, Christian. Okay, so this question's from Carol Vale. Will the boys there be able to return home at the end of term, or do they need to stay there for the break?
So boys will be able to go home on the holidays. The only caveat to that will be just dependent on where they're returning home. Some families that boys are returning to discrete communities where there might be some biohazard quarantining that might need to occur, but those families would be aware of that already. But otherwise, all boys are able to return home as normal for the school holidays.
This one's from Amy Smith. Would it be okay for the boarders who will now be day boys to eat morning tea and lunch with the boarders?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Absolutely. Well, probably they can't come into the dining room to eat lunch with the boys, but we would certainly be willing to work with boys that need that to do a lunch pack. Again, part of it is the social distancing that we're required to do in the dining room in regards to where they're spaced out. Again, I know it's frustrating because the boys leave that and then walk to the tuck shop and then they're shoulder to shoulder in the tuck shop. But again, part of the risk, the site inspection from Queensland Health was that we do maintain that high level of social distancing and limit where possible in boarding areas, not having other people come into that environment frequently to try to mitigate risk. But certainly to alleviate families that are having their sons billeted or staying with family or friends in Brisbane to be day boys, to I guess alleviate pressure on those families. If you would like us to organise day packs or lunch packs, we would be more than happy to do that. There's no cost, no charge. We'll take care of that. Again, we'll just link that through the heads of house that they can book those and boys can come and collect those from the dining room and be able to take those into the playground.
From Dan Cashin, are parents allowed to visit their son in boarding at college on a weekend while they're staying in?
It's a really good question, Dan. Probably at the moment we're not allowing, I guess, outside visitors into the boarding house. But if you wanted to come on site to see your son, certainly we could look at where those exemptions could occur. Some boys we have given some exemptions for special reasons. To leave campus for a specific reason because there was extenuating circumstances. But I think that that's important. I know that families that are able to connect with their sons on weekends would like to be able to do that. If you probably just give us one more weekend, we might be able to look at that for next weekend and just how we might be able to apply that. So thank you, really good question.
From Brendan, if we have left belongings at school last term, are we able to come and collect them before school goes back next week?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have this with 11s and 12s. Again, what I would ask you to do is just connect with your head of boarding house just to book a time. Again, probably not for boys not for families to come into the boarding house. The boy himself can come in and collect his belongings and take that. That's not a problem at all. We would just need to know when they're coming to get that gear, just to coordinate timing and things like that, and just alerting them to the fact that that's going to occur. But absolutely, there'd be blazers and school uniforms and all sorts of stuff that need to be picked up. That's not a problem at all.
This is just a general question that we've got from a few parents. How long will NC at home run if they're unable to return to school?
Yes, so essentially NC at home ends on Friday, but as I said, like a hybrid model will continue to run where teaching staff will will turn their cameras and audio on so that boys are able to essentially virtually enter into the classroom. And as the teacher teaches the class, they'll be able to view it and engage by asking questions as well.
From Anthony Curry, if boarders return as day boys, are they required to attend as a day boy every day, or can they do some days from home?
I'd certainly, Anthony, my suggestion would be that they attend every day as a day boy. I think the best solution is to get them into the class every day. And, you know, yeah, I think that would be the best solution. I know that might bring with itself its own set of challenges, but again, working with Jeff or myself to try to make that possible. And as I said, whether it's the bus service as well.
From Dorian Hallett, would it be possible for boys to take the Sunshine Coast bus a few times a week or for exam days, but not every day if it's too much travel?
Yeah, no, certainly they don't have to. Yeah, absolutely. I think it will be a long day for those boys. And maybe if they came down 3 times a week or 4 times a week, or to start with, it might even be 2 times a week. And then the other days they're logging in remotely. I think that would be a really good start. And then boys would be able to monitor sort of how much they would be able to handle. So absolutely, you don't have to come for the 5 days. I think the payment portal is set up for a one-off payment per week, but I will just make a note to try to adjust that so boys can pay per day.
And we've also had a question about a bus run. Is there a bus run to the Gold Coast at all?
There isn't at the moment. I'll get the details of who requires that, and we'll see if there are any other families from the Gold Coast that would require a bus. If we could get enough, maybe a couple of other boys as well, to sort of, I guess, be able to warrant sending a bus down, I can certainly take that forward to see, you know, the availability of buses to be able to go down. Again, maybe it's not every day, but maybe we could get a bus down there a couple of times a week. So we will certainly look at that. So please email me if you are from the Gold Coast and would like a Gold Coast bus.
Okay, from Cavette Caspanello, when will the Year 12 camp possibly be happening?
I think Year 12 camp, you're referring to Kairos. Kairos, the boys are going to be told tomorrow that Kairos will happen next term, in term 3. Please don't hold me to this. I believe it's in week 3, but Mr. Mara will confirm that with all Year 12 boys tomorrow. Mr. Todd will also confirm tomorrow about the formal will go ahead, but obviously on a different date, and Kairos as well. So there'll be information. There's a Year 11 and 12 online assembly, I guess you would call it, presentation tomorrow morning. So some of that information will be delivered tomorrow.
I think at the moment that's
all the questions. We might ask to see if anyone would like to come online, if that's possible. Megan, is that?
It is possible.
Volunteers.
No? Okay. If anyone did want to, they could certainly put through on a message. Otherwise, mums and dads and families, it's been wonderful to, I guess, spend this hour with you this evening. It's certainly been difficult for everyone. Please continue to connect with us. I'll be the first to apologise now that I get emails and I'm not able to respond to them as timely as I would like. But certainly I know that the gentlemen around here are far better than I am at responding to emails. So please do keep reaching out to us about how we can best help you. As I said, at the moment, we're going to work really closely on what the learning model will look like for your sons next week. We're going to continue to provide boarding at home. We're going to continue to provide tutoring and support academically at night. We're happy to support any family that would want it for your son to be able to stay with a day boy family for the coming weeks. We're happy to organise that as well. And hopefully, together as a community, we will get through this and be stronger for it at the other end. Oh, we do have some more questions. Great.
Okay, so who's this from? This is from Bernadette and Matthew Collins. Are boarders who meet interstate exemptions able to attend camps? Can they stay at boarding house?
So they can certainly attend camp, and I'm going to work with Mr. Kennellan around whether the boarding house would be open and what facility we could provide for the holidays. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that at the moment. I'll certainly make a note of that. And again, I would ask that families that need assistance on camps on the holidays to also let me know, so that we can, I guess, gauge how much or how many people are going to require that support, to see whether we just open a boarding house or, again, whether we try to facilitate some level of day boy ability and connection as well.
From Craig and Kate Warby, with the uncertainty around boarding this term, will we be back to full-time boarding in term 3?
I certainly hope so, but I don't know. I'm sorry. If wishing made it so, Kate, we would be.
From Marie and Nev Kelly, could the A-team tuition be extended to other year levels?
We can certainly look at that. At the moment, it's year 7 and 8, I believe, in groups. At the moment, we've got A-team tuition running through year 7 and 8. From year 9 to 12, we run Reach for the Stars, which is more individualised tutoring for subject-specific work. But yeah, a great question, and we'll certainly take that on notice to see if what we can do to assist.
On it. Can A-team tuition be brought earlier in the night, the sessions?
To start earlier in the night.
We can look at it.
What time is it?
6:38.
I think our plan, the reasoning behind where A-team tuition is and where the academic support online is we wanted to keep things as normal or routine-wise as normal as possible, that would be the normal time that boys would study of the evening. We wanted to make sure that when boys finished their online learning through the day, that they would get a good sizable break. And we just probably were concerned that we didn't want to break into a dinner time between sort of 5 and 6:30. We felt that might be sort of family time. So that's why we went with that 6:30. But again, happy to take, happy to take that on notice and look at what we can do to support that.
I think the final one was from Pam Laspina asking Casey if you could please give Nick a big hug when you see him next.
Pam, I don't know how that fits within the social distancing regulations at the moment, but I'll certainly loudly announce that Mum wants to give him a hug in front of the other boys for him.
Perfect.
So Linda's just asked if the meetings are recorded. So I'll answer that. It is recorded, and we will be able to send it out to you all tomorrow if you'd like to review it, or for anyone that missed it tonight, they can watch it as well.
Terrific.
I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, mums and dads, thank you again so much for logging in tonight. It was wonderful to share this time with you. I really hope that we are able to see all of you very, very soon. I know that the first function here at Nudgee will be a big one, whichever one it is and whenever that might be, but we certainly look forward to meeting again as a community. So have a lovely night, and thanks again. All the best.
See you all.
Bye.